July 25, 1944. 9:38 hours. Near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The air is already trembling before the bombs fall. A low mechanical roar spreads across the hedgerows like distant thunder rolling over a metal sky. German infantrymen crouch in shallow foxholes, boots sunk in damp Norman soil, rifles pressed to their chests. The ground beneath them begins to pulse, not shake, but pulse, as if the earth itself is trying to breathe. Then the first wave hits. A wall of explosions tears open the horizon. Fire climbs into the sky in slow, blooming pillars. Dirt, steel, and shattered trees lift upward together. You can almost feel the pressure slam against your chest even before the sound arrives. For weeks, this front had barely moved a kilometer. Now the sky is falling. General der Panzertruppe Fritz Bayerlein, commanding Panzer Le Division, watches through field glasses from a concealed observation post. He does not lower them when the bombing intensifies. He cannot. He has seen artillery barrages before. Poland, France, Russia. But this is different. There is no pause between detonations. No rhythm. Just continuous destruction, like a giant hammer grinding the land flat. His adjutant shouts something about communication lines. The field telephone is dead. Runners cannot move. Roads are gone. Entire sectors have vanished beneath smoke and dust. Bayerlein finally lowers the binoculars. Das ist kein Angriff, he murmurs. This is not an attack. It is annihilation. For nearly 7 weeks, Normandy had become a war of suffocation. The hedgerows, thick earthen embankments crowned with tangled brush, carved the landscape into a labyrinth of natural fortresses. Each field was a miniature battlefield. Each advance cost lives measured in meters. American infantry had bled to cross these barriers. Tanks were funneled into narrow lanes where German anti-tank guns waited with perfect sight lines. Progress slowed. Momentum dissolved. On maps, arrows barely moved. But behind the Allied lines, something had been building. Quietly, methodically. A new approach. A single decisive blow. Operation Cobra. At 9:40, the second wave arrives. Hundreds of heavy bombers release their payloads in precise lines stretching miles across the front. The sky is crowded with aircraft, B-17 flying fortresses and B-20 fall liberators flying in disciplined formation. Their bellies open in synchronized sequence. From the ground, it looks like the sky is shedding metal rain. Shockwaves roll across the countryside. German trenches collapse inward. Vehicles flip like toys. Even men far behind the intended target zone are thrown to the ground by pressure alone. A Panzer IV crew inside their armored hull hears nothing but a violent metallic scream as the tank shudders under the concussive force. Instruments fail. Dust fills the compartment. The commander cannot hear his own voice. Outside, the landscape is becoming unrecognizable. Fields vanish. Hedgerows disintegrate. Landmarks dissolve into a single expanding cloud of smoke. War, which had crawled for weeks, suddenly moves faster than thought. Further west, American infantry lie flat as bombs fall dangerously close to their own lines. The assault is so massive that even the attackers feel swallowed by it. But they know what comes next. Behind them, engines idle. Armored columns wait. This is not merely destruction. It is preparation. A door is being blown open. German command posts struggle to interpret what is happening. Reports arrive fragmented, contradictory, delayed. Entire regiments stop transmitting. Artillery batteries cannot respond. Their guns buried, crews scattered or dead. Colonel-level commanders send urgent messages upward. Defensive integrity compromised, armored reserves immobilized, visibility zero. But headquarters does not yet grasp the scale. They believe this is a local breakthrough attempt. Another push to gain a few hundred meters. They are still thinking in the tempo of the old battle. They do not yet realize the tempo has changed. By 10:15, the bombing shifts deeper into German positions. Smoke drifts across the battlefield in thick rolling layers. The sun disappears. The ground steams with heat and pulverized soil. Survivors emerge stunned, ears ringing, uniforms coated in gray, dust that turns every face into a ghostly mask. A young signals officer attempts to re-establish radio contact with division command. Static answers him. He tries again. Nothing. He looks around for familiar terrain. There is none. He is standing in a place that no longer resembles the map in his hand. General Bayerlein surveys what remains of his forward defensive belt. Entire sectors have ceased to exist. Anti-tank guns that once dominated narrow lanes are overturned or buried. Infantry strongpoints are silent. Supply routes are blocked by craters large enough to swallow trucks. He speaks quietly to his staff. If the Americans attack now, he says, there will be no front to hold. It is not fear in his voice. It is calculation and realization. At 11 o'clock, the bombing finally slows. The silence that follows feels unnatural, heavy, suspended, waiting. Across the shattered landscape, American artillery opens fire. Shells arc forward in coordinated waves, striking surviving defensive nodes. Smoke screens begin to form. Then engines start moving. Hundreds of them. The sound is not chaotic. It is organized power, a mechanical tide gathering momentum. From concealed assembly areas, American armored divisions begin to advance. Sherman tanks roll forward in formation. Infantry ride behind them. Engineers move with bridging equipment and bulldozers ready to carve paths through wreckage. For the first time in Normandy, there is space to move. The hedgerow prison has been broken. German forward observers attempt to report armored movement. Many cannot see beyond smoke. Others transmit incomplete sightings. Multiple tanks, direction southwest, strength unknown. But the deeper truth remains unseen. This is not a probing attack. This is penetration. Inside a command bunker miles behind the front, a German operations officer studies incoming reports with growing unease. The pattern is wrong. Units are not withdrawing in order. They are dissolving. Defensive geometry, carefully constructed over weeks, is unraveling in hours. He drafts a message requesting immediate armored counterattack authorization. It is already too late for counterattack planning. But no one in the room knows that yet. By afternoon, American armored spearheads begin slipping through gaps where German defenses once stood. Resistance exists, but it is isolated, fragmented, disconnected from any coherent line. Tanks that expected to fight field by field suddenly find open country ahead. Speed replaces attrition. Movement replaces stalemate. War changes character in real time. General Bayerlein issues urgent orders to regroup remaining forces into a secondary defensive line. But units cannot assemble. Communication is fractured. Terrain no longer supports organized resistance. He watches dust clouds on the horizon, the unmistakable sign of advancing armor. For the first time since the Normandy landings, he considers the possibility that the front itself may no longer exist. Not weakened, not pierced, gone. As evening approaches, German High Command still believes the situation can be stabilized overnight. Reinforcements are discussed. Defensive lines are redrawn on maps. Orders are prepared for counter-movements at dawn. But maps assume continuity. And continuity is precisely what has vanished. Across Normandy, something irreversible has begun. The corridor opened by Operation Cobra is widening faster than anyone predicted. And the men responsible for holding the line are beginning to understand a terrifying truth. They are no longer defending territory. They are trying to outrun collapse. By early afternoon, the smoke begins to lift in ragged curtains. What had been a continuous defensive line is now a landscape of gaps. Not breaches, gaps. Wide enough for vehicles to pass through without slowing. Wide enough for entire formations to disappear inside. American reconnaissance jeeps move first, engines low, crews scanning for surviving anti-tank guns. They expect ambush. They expect resistance behind every shattered hedgerow. Instead, they find silence. A lieutenant pauses his vehicle on a rise overlooking the shattered countryside near Saint-Lô. Through binoculars he sees something that does not fit the pattern of the Normandy campaign. Open ground. No continuous German line. No lead defense. Just isolated pockets of movement, and beyond them, space. He radios a simple message up the chain. Route viable. Armor can pass. That transmission marks the moment the battle changes character. Miles behind the front, inside a command vehicle packed with maps and radio equipment, General Omar Bradley listens without expression. His staff watches him closely. They know what this means. For weeks, he had waited for a single condition: room to maneuver. Not victory. Not breakthrough. Just room. Now the door is open. He gives the order calmly, almost quietly. Commit the armor. Within minutes, American armored divisions begin advancing at a pace Normandy had not yet seen. Sherman tanks roll forward in long columns, their engines growling steadily over churned earth. Infantry clings to hulls or follows behind in half-tracks. Engineers move with them, clearing debris, filling craters, carving routes through wreckage. Speed becomes the weapon. The terrain that once trapped movement now channels it forward. Each kilometer gained expands operational freedom. Each minute reduces the chance of German reorganization. Tank commanders report something unfamiliar over radio nets. No sustained resistance. They repeat it, as if unsure the words are accurate. Inside the shattered remains of forward German positions, survivors attempt to regroup. Officers shout orders through ringing ears. Runners move between units because radios no longer function. But there is no coherent front to reassemble. Units that once fought shoulder to shoulder now exist as fragments separated by destruction. A company commander searches for his battalion headquarters. It is gone. A battery of anti-tank guns attempts to reposition, only to discover the road network has vanished beneath craters. Command structure begins to dissolve. War, which depends on coordination, begins to lose its shape. General Fritz Bayerlein moves forward cautiously to assess the situation personally. His vehicle navigates around burning wrecks and overturned artillery pieces. The closer he approaches the former front line, the more evident the truth becomes. There is nothing left to hold. He studies the advancing dust plumes in the distance, unmistakable signs of large armored formations moving rapidly through open terrain. He turns to his staff. They are not probing, he says. They are exploiting. The distinction is fatal. A probe tests defenses. An exploitation assumes there are none. By mid-afternoon, American armored spearheads begin penetrating beyond the zone of bombardment. Their movement accelerates as resistance becomes sporadic rather than organized. Tank crews who expected brutal close quarters fighting now find themselves navigating crossroads and open fields. The pace increases. Units that once advanced cautiously now push aggressively, sensing opportunity. Radio traffic reflects the shift in momentum. Advancing without opposition. Enemy disorganized. Request permission to continue pursuit. Permission is granted. Again and again. German command posts farther to the rear struggle to interpret incoming reports. Messages arrive late, incomplete, or contradictory. Some describe catastrophic losses. Others claim the situation is stabilizing. Maps in headquarters rooms still show a continuous defensive line. Reality no longer matches representation. A staff officer studies a series of incoming position reports. He notices something alarming. Units are not withdrawing in sequence. They are vanishing from the grid entirely. He marks a red circle on the map where contact has been lost. Then another. Then another. The circles begin to connect. As afternoon shadows lengthen across Normandy, American forces continue to widen the corridor. Engineers clear routes faster than German forces can reorganize. Artillery shifts forward to support advancing armor, creating a moving wall of fire that prevents regrouping. The tempo is relentless. This is no longer a battle of position. It is a battle of time. And time now favors movement. A German signals officer finally re-established intermittent communication with higher headquarters. His voice is strained but controlled. Front line cannot be identified. Enemy armor moving freely. Request immediate reinforcement. The reply he receives is cautious, procedural. Hold positions. Counterattack preparations underway. He stares at the radio receiver in disbelief. Hold what positions? There is no line left to hold. As evening approaches, the scale of the breakthrough begins to reach senior German command. Reports from multiple sectors confirm the same pattern: concentrated destruction followed by rapid armored penetration. What had been interpreted as a localized crisis is now recognized as systemic failure. But recognition does not equal response. Reserves are limited. Communication is degraded. Terrain that once favored defense now enables enemy mobility. Strategic inertia sets in, the dangerous delay between awareness and action. On the advancing American side, commanders sense momentum building beyond expectation. Units that anticipated slow progress now measure distance in miles rather than meters. A tank platoon halts briefly at a crossroads. The commander climbs halfway out of his hatch and surveys the horizon. No defensive line. No prepared positions. Only smoke drifting behind them and open countryside ahead. He speaks into his radio. We're through. Simple words. Historic consequences. As darkness begins to fall, scattered German units attempt to form a secondary defensive belt. Some dig hastily. Others reposition artillery. But coordination is incomplete. Movement occurs in isolation, without a unified plan. They are reacting to events already in motion, not controlling them. In headquarters rooms far from the front, maps are updated one more time before night operations begin. New defensive lines are drawn. Counterattack arrows are sketched carefully across paper terrain. But the war unfolding on the ground no longer obeys drawn lines. It obeys momentum. And momentum is accelerating. By nightfall, American armored forces are advancing deeper than any projection had predicted that morning. German generals begin to confront an unthinkable possibility. The breakthrough is not temporary. It is irreversible. And somewhere in the darkening Norman countryside, the question emerges, quiet, unspoken, unavoidable. If the line cannot be restored, what happens to the army behind it? Night falls over Normandy, but the battle does not slow. Engines move under darkness. Headlights remain blacked out. Columns advance guided by dim signals and whispered instructions over radio nets. The shattered land still smolders behind them, but ahead, the road is open. You can almost hear the shift in rhythm, the difference between fighting and pursuing. Inside a forward American command post, operations maps are updated every 15 minutes. The lines marking friendly positions stretch farther west and south with each report. Staff officers exchange glances they try not to show. This is happening faster than planned. One armored column reports reaching open terrain near Avranches, a location whose importance is immediately understood. Control of this gateway means access to Brittany, and beyond it, the interior of France. A staff officer circles the location in pencil. The circle is small, but its implication is enormous. A path out of Normandy exists, and it is widening by the hour. Across the battlefield, German commanders attempt to construct coherence from chaos. General Fritz Bayerlein studies updated reports under the dim glow of a field lamp. His Panzer-led division, once considered among the Wehrmacht's most capable formations, is no longer functioning as a unified force. He reads casualty figures without expression. Vehicles destroyed. Communications severed. Units scattered. But one line captures his full attention. Enemy armored units operating beyond expected engagement zone. Beyond. Not within. Not approaching. Beyond. He understands immediately what many at higher headquarters still resist. The Americans are no longer trying to break the front. They are moving past it. Farther east, officers of the German 7th Army attempt to reorganize defensive structure along improvised lines. But orders issued at night reach units already in motion. Counterattack plans require forces that cannot be assembled. A colonel reviews a proposed defensive position along a secondary road network. He asks a simple question: which units will hold this line? No one in the room answers. Not because they refuse. Because no one knows. At dawn on July 26th, reconnaissance reports confirm what scattered field messages had only suggested. American armored divisions are advancing in depth, not merely pushing forward, but spreading outward, expanding operational freedom with each hour. Speed multiplies advantage. Every kilometer gained prevents German forces from restoring continuity. Every delay in response compounds disorder. War, once measured in attrition, is now measured in tempo. Inside an operations room miles behind the front, a German staff officer studies a wall map marked with colored pins. Overnight updates reveal a pattern that cannot be dismissed as confusion. The front line has not shifted. It has fractured. He removes a pin representing a destroyed unit. Then another. Then another. The gaps between surviving formations widen visibly. He whispers, almost to himself, "We no longer have a line, only positions." The distinction is devastating. A line can resist. Positions can be bypassed. Meanwhile, American forces accelerate exploitation. Armored spearheads advance along multiple axes, preventing German command from identifying a single focal point. Engineers repair roads with astonishing speed. Supply columns follow closely, ensuring momentum does not stall. Radio chatter among American crews reflects growing confidence and surprise. Minimal resistance. Enemy retreat disorganized. Continuing advance. War that once demanded caution now rewards speed. At a forward command post, General Omar Bradley receives updated field reports in calm silence. His staff waits for reaction. He studies the map for several seconds, then speaks a sentence that reframes the entire operation. They are coming apart faster than expected. Not optimism. Observation. Opportunity is no longer theoretical. It is unfolding. Back at German headquarters, recognition begins to spread upward through the chain of command. Reports from multiple core sectors confirm the same reality. Armored penetration too deep to isolate. Defensive units unable to regroup. Reserves insufficient for coordinated counterattack. Strategic options narrow rapidly. Commit reserves prematurely, and risk losing them in fragmented engagements. Delay, and risk losing operational control entirely. Neither choice offers recovery. In the field, German soldiers experience the transformation in simpler terms. Orders change mid-march. Routes are blocked. Units encounter friendly forces moving in opposite directions. Supply trucks arrive without destinations. Artillery fires at coordinates already abandoned. A lieutenant leading a depleted infantry platoon receives instructions to hold a crossroads that no longer exists, destroyed hours earlier by bombardment. He studies the map. Then the horizon. Then the map again. He folds it carefully and places it inside his tunic. Maps describe a world that has already disappeared. By midday, American armored units begin to fan outward from breakthrough corridors, threatening to encircle remaining German formations, still attempting to organize resistance. Encirclement, the word no commander wants to hear, begins appearing in field reports. Not as a prediction, as a possibility. Possibility quickly becomes probability when movement is one-sided. General Bayerlein drafts an urgent message requesting authorization for strategic withdrawal to prevent encirclement. His tone is measured, professional, unmistakably serious. He does not use dramatic language. He does not need to. The facts themselves are dramatic enough. But approval does not come immediately. Command structure, like the battlefield, struggles to adapt to new tempo. Time continues to move, whether decisions keep pace or not. Late afternoon sunlight cuts through lingering smoke across Normandy's scarred landscape. From elevated ground, observers can see dust trails stretching for miles, visible evidence of uninterrupted armored movement. One German staff officer studies these distant plumes through binoculars. He watches them for a long time. Then he lowers the lenses slowly. They are no longer attacking, he says quietly. They are advancing into France. It is not a tactical observation. It is strategic realization. As evening approaches, reports reach German high command confirming that American forces have secured critical road networks leading out of Normandy's confined terrain. The hedgerow battlefield, once a fortress, has become a trap for those still inside it. What began as a breakthrough now threatens to become a collapse of operational depth itself. And for the first time, Senior commanders confront a question more alarming than defeat in a single battle. If the army cannot restore the front, can it survive the retreat? July 27, 1944. Morning mist clings low over the Norman countryside, but beneath it the war is moving with unnatural speed. American armored columns no longer advance cautiously. They flow. Tracks grind over broken roads. Engines roar without pause. Dust hangs in the air, like a permanent haze marking the path of momentum. The battlefield that once suffocated movement has transformed into a corridor of opportunity. And at its southern edge lies a single objective whose importance now eclipses all others. Avranches. The town itself is modest, narrow streets, stone buildings, quiet farmland beyond. But strategically, it is a gate. Control it, and forces can pour out of Normandy's confined terrain into the open expanses of western France. Lose it, and an entire army risks entrapment. American reconnaissance confirms what commanders hoped but scarcely expected this soon. The approaches are weakly defended. German units nearby are disorganized, fragmented, and moving without coordination. Artillery support is sporadic. Defensive planning appears incomplete, as if the situation changed faster than command structure could react. Because it did. Inside a forward armored command vehicle, American officers review aerial reconnaissance photographs spread across a map board. The images show disrupted German movement patterns, not withdrawal in order, but retreat in confusion. Arrows on the operations map extend farther south. The tone inside the vehicle is focused, professional, but beneath it runs an unmistakable undercurrent of ruralization. If Avranches is secured, the campaign in Normandy will no longer be about breaking out. It will be about pursuit. German command begins issuing urgent directives. Stabilize defensive lines, hold critical junctions, prevent further penetration. Orders flow downward through radio channels already strained by disruption. But the battlefield no longer behaves predictably. Units assigned to hold key terrain discover that neighboring formations have already withdrawn or vanished. Supply convoys encounter advancing enemy armor where friendly forces were expected. Communication delays transform instructions into irrelevance. War requires synchronization. Synchronization is collapsing. General Fritz Bayerlein studies a situation report delivered by courier. He reads it once, then again more slowly. Enemy armored formations have advanced beyond projected containment zones. Attempts to organize a counterattack have failed due to insufficient concentration of force. He sets the report down carefully. For weeks, German defensive doctrine in Normandy had relied on containment, absorbing pressure, slowing advance, trading space for time until reserves could respond. But containment assumes boundaries, and boundaries no longer exist. Late morning, American armored spearheads reach the outskirts of Avranches. Resistance is scattered, localized, unable to form a coherent barrier. Tanks move cautiously at first, scanning for ambush, but the expected defensive intensity does not materialize. A Sherman tank command appears through his periscope at the open road stretching beyond the town. He had prepared for another brutal fight among hedgerows. Instead, he sees distance, space, possibility. He transmits a brief report over the radio. Objective within reach. Opposition light. The message travels upward through command channels with electric significance. Far to the east, German 7th Army headquarters receives confirmation that American forces are approaching the operational gateway of Normandy. Silence settles over the command room. Officers exchange glances not of confusion, but of comprehension. They understand what this means. If the Americans break through completely, German forces still engaged in northern Normandy risk being cut off from organized withdrawal routes. Encirclement is no longer theoretical. It is forming. Attempts to assemble reserves intensify. Orders are issued to reposition armored units for counterattack. But movement under pressure reveals another brutal truth. Speed favors the side already in motion. German units attempting to maneuver encounter advancing American forces at unexpected points. Routes planned on maps are no longer secure. Columns become exposed during repositioning. The operational initiative has shifted irreversibly. One side reacts. The other dictates. By midday, American forces secure key road junctions around Avranches. Engineers move rapidly to clear obstacles. Supply lines extend behind advancing armor, feeding momentum that no longer depends on a narrow breach. The corridor has become a highway. Reports begin describing something new, not breakthrough, not advance, but exploitation on a strategic scale. War has accelerated beyond the tempo of planning. Inside German command structures, the psychological shift deepens. The question is no longer how to stop the breakthrough. The question is how to prevent catastrophe. Staff officers review options for large-scale withdrawal from exposed positions in northern Normandy. But withdrawal requires coordination, protection, and time. 3 resources now in short supply. A senior operations officer summarizes the dilemma in a single sentence. If we remain, we risk encirclement. If we move, we risk collapse during movement. Both paths lead through danger. One path may already be closing. Late afternoon sunlight breaks through cloud cover, illuminating columns of American vehicles stretching for miles beyond Avranches. Observers report uninterrupted movement, a continuous flow of armor, infantry, artillery, and supply. From elevated terrain, it appears less like an advance and more like a release. A force long contained is now pouring outward. German field commanders send increasingly urgent messages requesting authorization for large-scale repositioning. The tone of reports shifts subtly but unmistakably, from tactical language to operational concern. They no longer describe engagements. They describe consequences. Loss of maneuver space. Threatened supply routes. Imminent encirclement. Words once reserved for strategic analysis now appear in field dispatches. Reality has overtaken doctrine. As evening approaches, confirmation arrives. American forces control the gateway at Avranches. The exit from Normandy is open. For the Allies, it is the beginning of operational freedom across France. For German forces still engaged to the north, it is something far more ominous. The path of retreat, once assumed secure, is narrowing. And somewhere within German command, a realization begins to solidify with chilling clarity. This is no longer a battle for ground. It is a race to escape a closing trap. Night returns, but this time the darkness offers no concealment, only urgency. Across northern Normandy, German units begin moving not to reposition, but to survive. Columns form along damaged roads under strict blackout. Engines idle in tense silence before movement begins. Officers consult maps illuminated by shielded lamps, tracing routes that grow more dangerous with each passing hour. They are not advancing toward an objective. They are trying to outrun geometry. The American breakthrough has created a widening arc of movement. Armored divisions push south and west, then begin turning eastward, probing for opportunities to cut supply routes and retreat corridors. Momentum is no longer linear. It is encircling. Inside a temporary German operations headquarters, staff officers track incoming reports with mounting alarm. Units attempting organized withdrawal encounter advancing American formations along unexpected axes. A colonel studies the situation map and traces the emerging pattern with his finger, a narrowing space where German forces still operate freely. He stops tracing midway. The shape is unmistakable. A pocket. At forward positions, German soldiers experience this transformation in immediate, physical terms. Supply trucks fail to arrive. Artillery support becomes sporadic. Orders change repeatedly as new intelligence arrives too late to be useful. A young lieutenant leading a mixed group of infantry and vehicle crews halts his column beside a damaged crossroad sign. He studies his map. The route marked safe 6 hours earlier is now contested. He folds the map slowly. For the first time, he issues an order not to hold, but to keep moving. Meanwhile, American armored spearheads continue expanding operational depth beyond the former front. Reconnaissance patrols report scattered German resistance, but little coordinated defense. Engineers work through the night to maintain mobility, repairing roads, clearing debris, bridging obstacles. Supply follows movement. Movement generates pressure. Pressure prevents reorganization. Tempo becomes decisive. At Allied headquarters, General Omar Bradley reviews reports indicating German forces are beginning large-scale withdrawal attempts from northern sectors. His staff studies aerial reconnaissance photographs showing congested movement along limited road networks. He speaks calmly, but the significance of his words is unmistakable. They are trying to get out. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. Every officer in the room understands what follows from that observation. If retreat routes can be severed, entire formations may be trapped. German High Command faces an escalating dilemma. Withdrawal may preserve forces, but only if conducted in time. Delay risks encirclement. Haste risks collapse of cohesion during movement. Orders are issued to reposition armored reserves to stabilize critical corridors. But these reserves must travel through territory already threatened by American advance. Movement itself has become a hazard. General Fritz Bayerlein receives confirmation that neighboring formations are withdrawing under pressure. His own remaining units are fragmented, low on fuel, and struggling to maintain communication. He studies the latest operational update in silence. Weeks earlier, the Normandy front had been a barrier, dense, restrictive, controlled. Now it is a funnel, and the funnel is narrowing. He issues instructions for organized movement toward safer positions eastward. His language remains precise, disciplined, professional. But the intent is unmistakable. Survival now depends on speed. Dawn breaks over Normandy on July 28 with an eerie clarity. Smoke has thinned. Visibility extends across miles of countryside scarred by bombardment and movement. From elevated observation points, American forward observers report a striking sight, long lines of German vehicles moving along exposed routes, attempting withdrawal under pressure. They are no longer concealed by defensive structure. They are visible targets in motion. Artillery coordinates are transmitted. Fire missions begin. 4 German units on the move. Danger arrives without warning. Shells land among congested columns. Vehicles are abandoned when roads become impassable. Commanders attempt to maintain order, directing traffic, reorganizing formations, urging speed without sacrificing discipline. But war under retreat obeys different rules. Control diminishes with every kilometer. American armored units begin probing eastward to identify choke points where retreat routes can be severed. Reconnaissance elements push aggressively, searching for opportunities to close the gap behind withdrawing forces. Radio traffic reflects a new objective: interdict movement. Block road networks. Prevent regrouping. The battle is no longer about breaking through. It is about sealing. Inside German command structures, realization deepens from concern into urgency. Situation reports no longer describe a deteriorating front. They describe a narrowing corridor of escape. Strategic language shifts accordingly. No longer hold. No longer counterattack. Withdraw. Preserve force. Avoid encirclement. But preservation requires coordination across units already fractured by bombardment and rapid movement. Coordination requires time. Time is disappearing. By midday, American reconnaissance confirms multiple German columns moving toward a limited set of road networks leading east. The pattern is unmistakable, converging movement toward remaining avenues of withdrawal. The trap is not yet closed, but its outline is visible. A German staff officer in a rear command post studies the latest operational map. He marks reported American positions with a pencil, connecting them with tentative lines of advance. When he finishes, he leans back slowly. The shape on the map is no longer theoretical. It is forming. He turns to a colleague and speaks quietly. If they reach the eastern corridor, the army will be cut off. The room remains silent, because everyone sees it. As evening approaches, armored engines continue to rumble across Normandy's roads, some advancing, some retreating, all moving within a battlefield whose geometry is changing faster than orders can follow. Momentum is no longer contested. It is decisive. And somewhere along the shrinking routes of withdrawal, commanders on both sides understand the same truth from opposite perspectives. One army is escaping. The other is closing. July 29, 1944. Late afternoon. Heat shimmers above a landscape carved by motion. From a ridge overlooking converging road networks east of the breakthrough, American observers track columns through binoculars. Dust trails twist across the countryside in overlapping arcs, some advancing with purpose, others retreating with urgency. Movement itself has become the battlefield. Inside an American command vehicle, fresh reconnaissance reports arrive in rapid succession. Armored units have penetrated deeper than anticipated. Routes once used for supply now serve as avenues for pursuit. A new phase begins quietly, almost matter-of-factly. Exploit, turn, close. The operational language is precise, but its meaning is vast. The war in Normandy has shifted from breakthrough to destruction of a trap force. General George S. Patton enters the widening corridor with mobile forces poised for rapid maneuver. His formations surge forward into open country, exploiting the space created by Operation Cobra. Speed is no longer a gamble. It is a weapon. Armored columns advance along multiple axes, seeking to link with forces pushing from the north and east. The geometry of encirclement tightens, not with a single decisive stroke, but through continuous pressure applied from different directions. 4 German formations still maneuvering in northern sectors, the change is felt as a growing absence of options. Routes once open become contested. Junctions once secure come under artillery observation. Movement slows under congestion, air attack, and constant uncertainty. A battalion commander studies his map one final time before ordering his column forward. The planned route now intersects reported enemy positions. The alternate route is longer and already crowded. He chooses movement anyway. Stillness has become more dangerous than motion. At German headquarters, staff officers no longer debate whether the front can be restored. The discussion has narrowed to preservation. How many units can be withdrawn? How much equipment can be saved? How quickly forces can escape before the corridor closes? Reports from field commanders share a common tone: disciplined, controlled, unmistakably urgent. Fuel low. Communications intermittent. Enemy armor operating in rear areas. The language of defense has vanished. By early August, converging Allied advances begin to compress German forces into a tightening arc near Falaise. Roads clog with vehicles attempting passage through shrinking gaps. Artillery fire brackets key routes. Air power hunts movement in daylight. The pocket is not yet sealed, but it is forming with visible inevitability. On the ground, the experience is immediate and physical. Convoys halt without warning. Units encounter unfamiliar formations, moving in the same direction, with the same objective: escape. Orders arrive that cannot be executed because the terrain they reference is already contested. An officer climbs onto a vehicle to gain visibility over the congestion. He scans the horizon. Smoke columns mark where artillery has already fallen. He understands without needing confirmation. Time has run out. American forward elements report increasing contact with disorganized resistance, pockets of determined defense lacking coordination or depth. Engagements are brief, intense, and localized. Once bypassed, resistance dissolves behind advancing armor. War that once crawled through hedgerows now flows around obstacles. The difference is decisive. Inside Allied command posts, maps once crowded with cautious arrows now display sweeping movements across western France. What began as an attempt to break a stalemate has evolved into operational collapse of the opposing front. Officers update positions in silence. No celebration. Only concentration. Because momentum must be sustained until opportunity becomes outcome. German commanders, hardened by years of war, confront a reality few had considered possible weeks earlier. The defensive system in Normandy, carefully constructed, stubbornly maintained, has ceased to exist as a coherent structure. It was not pierced. It was unraveled. Not by a single blow, but by a sudden change in tempo no doctrine could absorb quickly enough. As evening settles over the scarred Norman countryside, the sounds of engines continue, some driving forward into France, others driving desperately toward escape. The contrast is stark. One army moves with expanding space ahead. The other moves within narrowing space behind. Operation Cobra did not merely open a corridor. It changed the rhythm of the war in a single afternoon, transforming stalemate into movement, movement into collapse, and collapse into irreversible momentum. And in that transformation, German generals who once calculated defense in kilometers and weeks confronted a truth measured in hours. The front had not been pushed back. It had disappeared.